Mara had always been the kind of woman who loved quietly. She did not ask for much. She did not make scenes. She simply gave her time, her patience, her whole heart, and she gave it all to one man. His name was Calder Voss, and for as long as she could remember, she had believed he was meant for her. They had grown up in the same pack, the Ironvale Pack, a tight and proud community nestled between two mountain ranges where everyone knew everyone's name and family history. Calder was the Alpha's son, tall, serious, and respected by everyone around him. Mara was from a simpler family. Her father was a craftsman. Her mother kept a garden and made the best bread in the territory. They were not rich in title or land, but they were good people, and Mara had grown up believing that goodness was enough. When the bond between her and Calder made itself known on her 21st birthday, a deep, certain feeling that settled in her chest like something finally clicking into place, she felt no fear. She felt relief. She had loved him for years without knowing exactly why. Now she understood. The bond only confirmed what her heart had already known. She did not run to him that day. She waited. She was patient, the way only someone truly in love can be. Not passive, not desperate, but steady. She helped wherever she could. She learned the customs of leadership because she wanted to stand beside him meaningfully. She listened when elders spoke. She sat quietly through long meetings she was not required to attend, simply because she wanted to understand the world he was preparing to lead. People in the pack began to notice. They smiled at her in that knowing way people smile when they believe something good is coming for someone who deserves it. Two of the elder women told her privately that she carried herself like a Luna. She did not say anything back. She only smiled and went home, and sat with those words like they were a promise. The founding ceremony came every year, but this one felt different. It was the largest gathering Ironvale had held in a decade. Families came from neighboring territories. The fire in the center of the gathering ground burned higher than usual. Mara wore a simple dress, dark blue, and stood near the back as the ceremony began. When Calder called her name and asked her to step forward into the circle, she thought she knew what was about to happen. Her hands were steady. Her chin was up. She walked through the crowd with her eyes on him, and she did not notice, not at first, that his expression was not the one she expected. He spoke clearly and without hesitation. He said that Mara Ashford was not a suitable match for the Alpha of Ironvale. He said the pack needed a Luna with political connections, with strong bloodlines, with the kind of background that would strengthen alliances in difficult times. He said none of this unkindly. He said it the way someone reads a list, item by item, finished, final. Every person in that circle heard every word. Mara stood very still. She felt something move through her. Not rage, not tears, but something quieter and colder than either. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, and turned around, and walked out of the circle, the same way she had walked in, with her chin up and her hands steady. She did not look back, not once. By the next morning, she was gone. She packed only what was hers, left a short note for her mother, and walked out of Ironvale before the sun was fully up. She did not tell anyone where she was going, because she did not yet know. She ended up in a place called Ravenspire, a wide, open territory that did not belong to any single pack. It was where people went when they needed to start over, and it turned out there were more such people than she had ever imagined. Healers and builders, teachers and wanderers, wolves and humans living in an easy, unstructured peace. Nobody asked her where she came from. Nobody knew what had happened to her. She was simply Mara, and that was enough to begin with. The grief came later, when she stopped moving long enough to feel it. It arrived in the middle of the night, mostly, and it was heavier than she expected. She had not just lost a man. She had lost a future she had been quietly building in her mind for years. Every detail of it, all the small daily things she had imagined sharing with someone who had, apparently, never imagined them back. She let herself grieve. She did not pretend she was fine. But she also decided, somewhere in those long, quiet nights, that what had happened to her was not the end of her story. It was, at most, the end of a chapter she had been writing in the wrong direction. An old mediator named Soren ran a small training house in Ravenspire. He had spent 40 years settling disputes between packs, negotiating treaties, and teaching young people how to think clearly under pressure. Mara found his notice board by accident and read it twice before she walked through his door. Soren was not an easy teacher. He did not offer comfort or encouragement. He offered questions, hard ones, the kind that made a person sit in silence for a long time before they could answer honestly. He pushed Mara in ways she had not been pushed before, and she discovered, slowly and then all at once, that she was very good at this work. Not just adequate, genuinely, naturally gifted. She learned how to read a negotiation before it began, what the unspoken fears in a room were, where the real tension lived beneath the polite words. She learned how alliances were built and why they broke. She learned the difference between a leader who commanded through fear and one who led through trust, and why only one of those structures ever lasted. Soren told her plainly one evening, without ceremony, that she was the best student he had trained in 20 years. She thanked him and went back to her notes. There was still more to learn. Dorian Crest came to Ravenspire 18 months after Mara arrived. He was the alpha of the Goldenmere Pact, a coalition of 5 pacts that had, over 30 years of careful work, become the most respected diplomatic force in the Northern Territories. He had built most of that reputation himself, beginning when he was barely older than Mara was now, inheriting 2 broken pacts that were closer to war than peace, and turning them into something that lasted. He came to Soren for help with a long-standing border disagreement between 2 of his member pacts. Mara ran the preliminary sessions in his absence, gathering information, mapping the actual concerns beneath the stated ones, preparing a framework that would give both sides something real, without asking either to surrender dignity. When Dorian finally arrived and reviewed her work, he sat with it for a full hour before he said anything. Then he asked to meet her. Their first conversation lasted most of an afternoon. He asked her 3 questions, and they were not the questions she expected. He did not ask about her background or her family, or where she had trained. He asked what she believed a leader truly owed to the people who followed them. He asked what she thought made an alliance genuinely strong rather than simply convenient. He asked what she would do if she were given authority she had not asked for. She answered all 3 honestly. She did not perform confidence she did not feel, and she did not shrink from the parts of her answers that were uncertain. He listened to everything she said without interrupting, without nodding along, without any of the small performances people do when they are waiting for someone to finish so they can speak. When she was done, he looked at her for a moment, and said that he thought he had been looking for someone like her for a long time. He did not say it to flatter her. He said it the way someone states a fact they have only just confirmed. He offered her a position on the Goldenmere Council as a policy advisor, not as his companion, not in any personal role, as a professional, on her own terms, with her own authority in her own area. He told her clearly that he wanted her to choose this work because it suited her, not because she needed a place to land. She thought about it for a week. Then she said yes. The year that followed was the most intellectually alive Mara had ever felt. She worked on real problems with real consequences. She sat at tables where the decisions made would affect thousands of people, and she found that the pressure did not shrink her. It steadied her. She was good at this, not just trained, but genuinely built for it. Dorian watched her work with the quiet attention of someone who already knew what he was looking at, but found the details continuously interesting. He did not interfere. He did not explain her to other people, or position himself as the reason for her success. He simply created the conditions and stepped back. Their relationship grew slowly and honestly. There were no dramatic moments. There was conversation, long and real, and growing trust, and a shared way of looking at problems that felt, to both of them, like something rare. When he asked her to become his Luna, he did it privately, without ceremony or pressure. He told her that Goldenmere had a tradition. A Luna was not installed by an alpha. She was recognized by each of the 5 councils independently, on the basis of her own merit. If any council had a genuine concern, the process would stop. He asked if she would be willing to go through that process, not as a test of her love for him, but because he believed she would pass it, and he wanted her to hold a title that was fully and truly her own. All 5 councils approved her. 2 of them did so without reservation in the very first meeting. The Covenant circlet was not a decorative object. It was a piece of worked copper and silver that had been present at every major Goldenmere treaty for 30 years. Wearing it meant holding real authority, Not symbolic, not secondary, but equal and documented. When Mara put it on for the first time at the Golden Mere Unification Summit, the largest gathering of packs the Northern Territories had seen in a decade, she wore it simply. No performance. No display. It fit the way things fit when they are actually yours. Calder Voss was at that summit. He came because he had to. Iron Veil was in serious trouble. Alliances he had counted on had fractured. Territory agreements had collapsed, and the pack was stretched far beyond what its current resources could manage. The Golden Mere Pact was the only coalition with the standing and the reach to help. He came to ask. He did not know who Golden Mere's Luna was until he walked into the formal reception and saw her standing beside Dorian, greeting delegates from 4 different territories, with the ease of someone who had done exactly this 100 times before. She was wearing the circlet. She was laughing at something a visiting elder had said. She looked, and this was the word that stayed with him, though he would not have chosen it out loud. She looked completely herself. Several of the Iron Veil elders were at the summit too, following their alpha's diplomatic connections. They had been in the circle the night Mara was turned away. They recognized her immediately. A few of them looked at Calder when they did. He requested a private meeting with her. She received the message, discussed it with Dorian, and sent a written reply. She would chair the preliminary session for Iron Veil's petition herself, as was her right as Golden Mere's co-authority, and she looked forward to hearing the case on its merits. The session was 2 hours long. She ran it with the same precision she brought to everything, clear, focused, fair. She asked the questions that needed asking. She did not bring up the past. She did not allow the room to become personal. Iron Veil's situation was real and serious, and she treated it that way. At the end, Golden Mere offered a structured support arrangement with clear terms and a 2-year oversight requirement. It was not charity. It was a working agreement between parties who each had something to offer and something to be accountable for. Calder accepted. He did not have another option. When the session ended and the other delegates had filed out, he approached her. He said her name, just her name, Mara, not her title. She turned to face him. She waited. He said that he had been wrong about her, that he had been wrong about what she was and what she was worth. He said it plainly, without excuse. She looked at him for a moment. She thought about the girl who had stood in a firelit circle with her hands steady and her chin up, walking out into a morning that felt like the end of everything. She thought about Soren's long questions and Ravenspire's quiet nights, and the first time she had sat at a Golden Mere council table and realized, with a deep and settled calm, that she belonged there. She said, "I know, and I am glad you were." Then she picked up her folder from the table and walked out, because there was a dinner with 3 council heads starting in 20 minutes, and she had things to say that mattered. In the years that followed, Iron Veil recovered steadily under the terms Mara had helped design. Calder led his pack forward with more care and more humility than he had before. The agreement held. The Northern Territories moved through a long period of relative peace. Mara continued her work at Golden Mere. She and Dorian built something slow and real, a partnership that gave each of them more room to be fully themselves, not less. She never forgot where she had come from, or what had been said to her in that circle. But she also never let it become the most important thing about her. It was one night, one moment in a life that turned out to be very long and very full. People who knew the story told it differently, depending on who they were. Some said it was a lesson about what happens when you judge a person too quickly. Some said it was about the kind of love that does not ask you to disappear in order to be accepted. Some said it was simply the story of a woman who was told she was not enough, and went ahead and built a life so complete that the question eventually stopped mattering. All of them were right. That is usually how the truest stories work.